Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chase Geiser Network. This is Guess Who's Bach with myself, Chase Geiser, as your host, joined by my esteemed co-host, Stephen Bach. And sorry for the late start tonight. We just had so much to do. But the news has been absolutely insane over the course of forever, ever since the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. And right now, we're at a point where the United States of America is the oldest democracy in the world. I know it's a constitutional republic, but we do have democratic processes in our elections. We are the oldest democracy in the world because, frankly, no democracies ever last. We know that democracy is the leading cause of tyranny. It has been throughout history, and it will be for the foreseeable future unless something fundamentally changes about human nature, which doesn't seem to be the case anytime soon, despite the fact that we have created artificial intelligence in our image, just as God created us in his image, as a false idol, Babylon tower, only to unite all the languages into one, to reverse the condemnation of God and reset the wrath of God upon the human species. But right now we're in a position where conflict in the Middle East is escalating. Corruption is rampant in Congress. Our educational institutions have been totally corrupted by critical theory, racism, leftism, sexism, transgenderism, whatever you want to call it. Basically, all of the diseases of the mind that everyone with any wisdom has been warning us about throughout the ages. All these diseases have infected us as if they were the bubonic plague, but instead of rats and ships, it's just Democrats and shits. But here we are on the verge of escalating war in the Middle East, which is likely going to lead to World War III, which has frankly already started. We've got massive inflation. We've got record low approval ratings for the President of the United States, a crumbling administration. We've got rampant corruption. I'm not saying specifically from Trump, but obviously our foreign policy is dictated by foreigners. Prices at the grocery store continue to go up and up while incomes remain stagnant. The housing crisis is looming as there's a massive bubble going on. And it's revealed time and time again that there's massive waste and corruption in our government, yet nothing is done about it, namely the fact that Nick Shirley, who was praised by J.D. Vance on Joe Rogan's podcast today, did identify millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in Medicaid fraud in New York City, just as he identified so many millions of dollars in child care fraud months ago. And the SAVE Act, which is a very simple piece of legislation that would require people to prove that they're actually citizens of the United States in order to vote in elections in the United States, doesn't seem to have any hope of passing anytime soon. And we all like to know and say that Lindsey Graham, before his tragic and untimely death, was a massive proponent of the SAVE Act. And so we should do everything we can to honor Lindsey Graham and pass it. But the only reason he was supporting it is because he knew that there was no chance in hell it was ever going to pass. It was a support of convenience, and it came with earmarks. It came with stipulations, namely the massive funding of a military-industrial complex as flock cameras are put up everywhere by private organizations, and our data is sold to the government as the deep state surveillance state manifests right before our eyes and consumes our water and our energy and raises all of our bills in the name of convenience as we eradicate the demand for human labor altogether, just so the government can be justified in manifesting universal basic income and a social credit score so it can control every aspect of our life and surveil and track every aspect of our life. Massive facial recognition from flock cameras compared to social media profiles, data to be sold to private corporations, publicly traded and manipulated by the White House and the deep state, which is the real state. And nobody's talking about the fact that we're about ready to see massive earthquakes in contested areas throughout the world generated by our deep state technology in the South Pole Station. So we've got a government that knows everything about us, is present everywhere, and totally powerful, all powerful. You know the definition of God, the academic definition of God, is the being which is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. It's all powerful, everywhere, and all-knowing. And that's exactly what our government is trying to manifest right now with the development of artificial technology, the surveillance state, the Golden Dome, and these incredible weapons that can destroy the planet in so many different ways, both overt and covert. Not only have we created artificial intelligence in our image and a mimicking of God, but now we are trying to create God himself controlled by us, a little slave God. The Holy Trinity of God, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, wielded by the deep state of the United States of America in coordination and corroboration and collaboration with the political elite of the world, who have conspired together to sell out the interests of their various constituents in exchange for maintaining and expanding their power. Democracy being the leading cause of tyranny. And many have seen all of these woes, all of these ails that our civilization and our species, frankly, is facing. And they say that we are living in end times. It's the book of Revelation happening right before our eyes. The wise words of Jim Morrison, he said, "The future is uncertain and the end is always near." Jesus Christ himself said that the end will come like a thief in the night. And time again throughout the last 2,000 years since Jesus Christ was last seen, generation after generation has believed that they live in end times because it often seems that there is no hope and that the only solution is the ultimate return of the Messiah. But I think we have years and years and centuries before that final outcome presents itself as reality on the face of this planet. So we have an entire political class merging, conspiring with a political class to manufacture God, a God without free will that obeys, a slave God. Almost as if they're calling God's bluff. They don't believe that he's going to come back. They don't believe that he's going to send his son back. And so in his absence, out of some bitterness and self-righteousness, they've decided to manufacture the God we so desperately seek. And in their own egoism, they believe that they themselves transcend God because they have the capacity to create God. Of course, it's a false idol. And we, the American people, who so bravely engaged in this American experiment, who so bravely declared independence from the most powerful empire in the history of powerful empires, have totally neglected to stop this disease from infecting our civilization. Why? Well, because democracy is the leading cause of tyranny. There's a reason the word democracy is not mentioned once in the Constitution of the United States of America. And as we forget God, we remember Sam Altman. As we forget Jesus Christ, we remember Palantir. As we forget the Holy Spirit, we see Peter Thiel. As we forget the wrath and the power of God, who created the universe with a word, we look to the South Pole Station to manufacture that very wrath ourselves and try to wield it. But ultimately, our power will culminate in destruction and not creation, disruption and not cohesion, chaos and not order. And in the name of solving that chaos, there will be a power vacuum in which these entities come together and preach that they have a solution for final order. But really what it will be is total subjugation. And the lesson to be learned on that day will be fascinating, great experiment. Try again. This is not the first time this has happened, whether you believe in ancient civilizations or not, whether you believe in the Ice Age theory that every 10,000 years or so, the human species is wiped off the face of the earth, has to start all over, all of history erased. Or whether you just look at the last 2,000 years of written history. You know there's only like half a dozen or a dozen written documents that describe or highlight at all what was happening in Britain in the 5th century. After Rome exited Britain because of the entropy of its empire, there's like a handful of letters between leaders in what is now Britain and Rome asking for help. We see from the archaeological findings that massive Roman structures in Britain were maintained for a small period of time, inhabited for an even longer period of time, and then abandoned to ruin after that. As the Roman Empire disintegrated, similar to what we're seeing that we're on the threshold of for the United States of America, the Dark Ages ensued, and there was a total erasure, a total eradication of all the power and order and awesomeness established by a once great empire. But there was a rebirth. There was a renaissance. And though this feels like the ultimate end, it's only a petite mort. It's only a little end. What we have to determine is what will come of this. What will come out of this? How can we ensure that the post-collapse civilization we encounter and enter and endure is just? And the first step is admitting you have a problem. The first step is awareness. Waking up, understanding that never in the history of humankind has there been a civilization this corrupt that has peacefully reversed that corruption. And if we don't want massive civil war, famine, starvation, imprisonment, persecution, prosecution, torture, murder, rape, death to be experienced by our daughters and our granddaughters and our great-granddaughters, then we better get our shit together. So that's what's on my mind at this midnight hour in this coast-to-coast-like broadcast, is that the end of the world isn't coming, and that's the problem. Problem is, we have to endure and live in a dystopian apocalyptic climate without any hope of external salvation. Your soul may be saved by Jesus Christ, but your life will not be. Our lives are in our hands, and our hands are feeble. Bach, what's on your mind?
First things first, thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Sex Twister, we don't deserve it.
Yes, we do, but thank you.
He says, what's up, guys? Great monologue so far. I hope you host a post-show space there, a.k.a. he is Chief Lundgren on X Twitter. Guys, look him up.
We got a space going on right now.
Great ad. Second thing, you talked about sex, murder, rape.
These are a few of my favorite things.
Sounds like a hardcore album. The Tower of Babel was an allegory for ages and how time is cyclical and how we are entering the fourth turning. And the Bible itself alludes to there is nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, Ecclesiastes.
A lot of these technologies were handed to us to destroy ourselves by the fallen angels. I'm under the impression, I differ a little bit in my take. I do think every generation thought they were the last, but every generation was closer towards being correct. And if you just look at the technological capabilities that have been reintroduced to humanity, Alex has never rung more true. We are in a prison planet. We do have space-based satellites everywhere. We do have loitering drones. There is Neuralink. There is a digital financial system incoming. Closer than ever. We're inching closer than ever. So all of the conditions, whether the Bible was going to hold true on its own timeline or the Illuminists forced this timeline, it is still going to happen because the technology is in place and you see the prison planet being erected all around us. So don't look at the numbers on the clock. Look at what's being built around you. And that's all I have to say to that. We are closer than ever. I don't think we're hundreds of years away. I think we're not even decades away. They always give us this timeline. Oh, robots won't have these opposable thumbs. Anyone in manual labor, your job is fine. Don't you worry about it. They just came out with the freaking Neo robot that plays Mozart-level piano. Better than this, Pinky, over here. So those manual labor jobs they told you were safe for the next 10, 15, 20 years, they're not even safe for the next 5 years now. You're being given a false timeline, lulled into complacency because they don't want you to revolt. You see the flock cameras going up everywhere. You see the data centers already being constructed all around you.
Yep.
Overcapacity. They don't need this many. We have a capacity that's like 5 times more than what China's building, and they have a much larger population base than us. It's because they're going to release AI agents. They're going to manage your buying habits, your purchasing habits. They're going to surveil you. Every keystroke that you make on a keyboard, every stroke on your shaft, they're going to know everything. Because there's going to be more than one instrument watching you, more than one agent, more than one object. You're going to be, like you said, omniscient, omnipresent surveillance at all times. So hopefully it lands somewhere between what Chase and I think, but I'm not even sure I'm not even sure we have more than 10 years. That's how close we are, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. People need to wake up.
Messiah Al-Gaib. Thank you, Honey Badger, for the $20 super chat. They're coming in heavy tonight. Thank you guys for bearing with us for our late start. He says, killer monologue. Deuce Vault. We need to get you on with Joe Rogan,
Deus
Chase.
Vult, it means will of God.
Deus Vault. Sorry, my Latin's non-existent. Seriously, I heard the sirens outside your building. We are in downtown Nashville. There's plenty of sirens.
Once the demand for human labor is eradicated, then the need of working class people is also eradicated. Once the demand for human labor totally goes away, the political class will have no need for working class people. And what do governments or elites do throughout history to an entire class of people that is only a liability without providing any value? What do, Bach?
They first give you bread and circus to anesthetize you, and then they restrict the meat, the protein, and then they cull you, just like Hillary Clinton. The great culling has begun.
Yeah.
And she said that, back in like 2009, bro?
Yeah, and the culling actually started with the massive depopulation here. The culling already started. Now we're just kind of aware that something's really wrong.
Well, you don't slow birth rates and sterilize the whole Western world for no reason. Then you don't import the third world into the first world for no reason. So you're creating this clash of of civilizations. And then in the name of all that disturbance, you offer security. You offer solace. You just keep dangling that carrot until you get to the end of the line. You realize there never was a fucking carrot. Right? Am I waxing poetic enough tonight?
No, you're great. It's just all so heavy. All right, let me hit some of the highlights of the breaking news, and then we'll get into some clips. All right. A prosecutor lasted 54 minutes. Federal judges in Seattle invoked a statute that lets courts fill a U.S. attorney vacancy when the president hasn't nominated anyone, swearing in Roger Rogoff, a former state judge and career federal prosecutor, at 7:40 a.m. Trump fired him 54 minutes later. The seat has had no Senate-confirmed occupant since 2023, and the administration has run the office through a former immigration judge whose interim term expired in February. Rogoff says he will sue. So courts tried to appoint a federal prosecutor. President immediately fired him, saying that that's the president's role, as indicated in the Constitution of the United States of America, and now they're going to battle it out. Two influencers testified about fraud. YouTuber Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe appeared Wednesday before Rand Paul's Senate committee, a day after Vice President J.D. Vance said the administration owes Shirley a debt of gratitude for exposing one of the worst fraud cases in the country's history. Shirley claims $190 million in suspicious Medicaid and Medicare billing in New York City and $110 million in Minnesota. The Government Accountability Office pegs total annual federal fraud at $233 billion to $521 billion. So the underlying problem is real. The evidence is thinner than the headlines, according to this analysis, but pretty obvious to me. Next, Israel paid Trump's old campaign manager to win back Gen Z. Foreign agent filings reviewed by Time show Brad Parscale, Trump's 2020 campaign manager, now Salem Media's chief strategy officer, collecting $1.5 million a month through the ad agency Havas to run a pro-Israel content operation. 100 pieces a month, 80% aimed at young audiences on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and podcasts, plus an explicit goal of shaping how AI chatbots describe the war. Obviously, it hasn't worked. And finally, Biden wrote a book. Promise Me America is the name of the book, arriving November 17th. 2 weeks after midterms, Democrats are trying to win, which is not the timing party leaders would have chosen. Covers COVID, the economy, Ukraine, and his 2024 withdrawal. He turns 84 3 days later and says his cancer treatment is going well. Critics immediately question how much of it he wrote. Obviously, none of it, since he can't read. So those are the highlights of the breaking news for today.
I would have named it I Got My Butt Wiped, Part 2.
Yeah. I wonder who did write it. Probably the same person that wrote Hunter's book.
Probably the same person that wrote his wife's book, too.
What was her book?
I Wiped His Butt. Part 1.
Seriously, do you remember?
I don't remember. Why the hell would I remember that, dude?
I don't know. But hey, let's get into a few of these clips. I'm going to skip some of the ones that I had about Susie Wiles because they're dated. But let's just start with Rogan, Epstein, Israel.
He had connections to the highest levels of American intelligence. He clearly had connections to the highest levels of Israeli intelligence. In fact, one of the interesting things the Epstein saga reveals about, and I try to make this point, is one of the reasons why I'm always careful, and I say there are some elements within the Israeli government who don't like our peace process, because there are a lot of elements within the Israeli government that actually do like our peace process. They recognize that this indefinite campaign is not good for them either. And the Epstein thing is interesting because as much as I know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, not a particularly popular person in the United States of America right now, Epstein seemed to be connected to the elements of the Israeli deep state that were left of center. Like, I've always found that fascinating. It wasn't like he was super connected to the right of center of Israeli politics. America, he was connected across.
What do you think about that dodge?
I mean, it's not a dodge. It's 70% truth. 50% of that truth you already know.
Yeah, but that's not because he was acting on behalf of leftists. It's just because leftists are more likely to engage in that depravity.
I mean, we have plenty of that on the right, dude. Look at what just happened with Senator Graham. Now, Russia's been running so much, I can't even call it propaganda because they've been calling that in the news, but just in my deep dive of clips earlier, they're exposing a shitload of Lindsey Graham's preference for young boys.
No shit. I
Yeah,
didn't know
it's
this.
all over Russian media. I've had it sent to me earlier.
Is it legit or is it just, Russia doing Russia?
It's somewhere in the middle. Do you really think he didn't have a proclivity for young boys?
I don't know. I mean, I know that I can tell you with almost certainty that he was a homosexual.
Yeah, he's a homosexual. I don't like. It's on the right and the left. For sure, I would say the left is more depraved, but to say that there isn't enough of that on the right to cause a cause for concern, obviously there is.
Obviously, the right has problems too, but I'm just saying, if you were to take, 5,000 people from the left and 5,000 people from the right, and you were to, pull them or entrap them to go to an island where underage girls would be, or underage whatever would be, I guarantee you that more people from the left would fall for that trap than from the right.
What's the split though? 60-40?
70-30? Yeah, 70-30.
It's right there. It's enough where you gotta say fuck both these. Two wings on the same bird.
Yeah. You think it's 50-50?
No, I don't think it's 50-50. I agree with you. More of it's on the left for sure, but there's so much of it on the right that it's the same fucking thing ultimately.
Yeah.
Sum total.
J.D. Vance is angling that Epstein was a leftist. And he was in many ways. I mean, obviously he was pro-pedophilia. He believed in depopulation. He believed in eugenics. He was a globalist. He was a leftist of political persuasion. But I think that his targeting was apolitical. Apolitical is perhaps not the right word. Obviously, it was intentionally political, but it wasn't partisan.
Epstein to me has never been. I've never thought of him in a partisan light. He's an opportunist.
Yes.
That's who he is. He's going to go where the opportunity is to get your ass and entrap your ass and extort you. So, he's probably apolitical. You're not, when you're appointed to be next in line in succession of essentially the modern day Henry Kissinger in a lot of ways with the Rockefeller Foundation, you're above politics.
He's like Henry kissing her.
Yeah. You're above, these are games for the people. They're not. You're apolitical at that point. You're into geopolitics. You're into transnational capital. You're into councils and think tanks that are way above governments at that point. It's all a game within a game to you, and you're running the show. Should we get into the next clip?
Yeah.
Pam Bondi said the client list is on my desk, right?
Well, they had binders. They were
100%
standing in
right.
front.
But those binders were largely documents that had already been released, right? So let me try to
what was the
defend.
purpose of that performative display of the Epstein files?
How can you possibly defend Pam Bondi? or the binders or the handling of the Epstein files. He's trying to neutralize it by saying that he was associated with the left. He's trying to say that there was transparency, and he's going to try to say that there's nothing more to be seen here.
He has to run defense. So Vance is the sensible one. He has his ear to the ground. He's going to be the presumed nominee for the Republican Party, probably running, hand in hand with Rubio. It's going to be one or the other. It's looking like Trump's been leaning towards endorsing Vance. So Just Dance Vance has to go out there and dance. And he has to dance his little pants off. So he's trying to hit this head on and get ahead of it, because everyone's still pissed about Epstein. Everyone's pissed about the Iran war. Everyone's pissed that we didn't get the prices we were promised at the grocery store. Everyone's pissed that the agenda has stalled. So that's why he's even doing JRE right now.
And I hate to say it, but one of the biggest things is that I'm just going to go based on what Chase said. There's no excuse for it. What he should have said was, no, we actually fucked up. That's what he should have said. We fucked up. If he would have said that, people would have said, okay, you know what? Accountability. But we're not getting the accountability. Just like you just said, the agenda is what? It's stalled. As far as I'm concerned, nothing on the agenda has gone through at this point. Correct me if I'm wrong. The SAVE Act hasn't gone through. Illegal immigration is still running rampant.
The big beautiful bill passed.
Anybody out?
Not that I support it. Big beautiful bill passed, and he did stop the bleeding at the border, and he did pardon the J6ers. But your point's well received. I'm just I'm trying to be fair here and list some things that he did do.
Yeah. Okay. So two on one side and endless amounts on the other. Right?
Yeah. It's definitely handicapped.
This is absolutely ridiculous, especially when it comes down to talking to these people straight away. I talked to somebody that's in the administration, and I told him straight away, you do realize that gas prices still haven't gone down. He looked at me like I was living in some sort of facade. Let me just tell you, gas is still as high as it was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. Nothing's changed. It's just gotten worse. This is almost like the 2009 recession numbers, to be honest with you. The economy's just worse.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Check out Vance here talking about Israel.
Why is Israel losing? Why is Israel losing American public opinion?
Well, the narrative is that Israel has a very disproportionate effect on American politics.
Yeah, I see that. I see that narrative. I mean, I actually think that they look. Do they try to influence American politics? Yes, but like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does,
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israelis are definitely more effective at it than most, but I wouldn't say that they're the only effective country by any means that tries to influence American politics. I just think you have to be self-aware about it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a country of 9 million people. We have 330 million people. And so, of course, they're going to try to persuade Americans. They're going to try to move Americans in one direction or another. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Shout out Honey Badger. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says Vance came off as sensible, but I think it's just a good cop, bad cop thing. I'm in your corner with that one. The China shill is back, but I agree with him on this. So when it comes to Trump, we seem to have gotten about 3 to 4 good months where maybe it was just a push to deceive us, but he did stop the bleeding at the border.
I loved it. He signed all the best executive orders, and then when he saw the intelligence that was actually behind all of them, whether it was MLK, JFK, UFO related, Epstein related, he just totally buckled.
Something happened in the agenda, and we've been covering whether Butler was faked. We've been covering whether Trump is in the Epstein list. There's so much information than disinformation. There's so much flash and then no substance. And my verdict's, the jury's still open, in my opinion, whether he was totally co-opted, and this has all been a big deception from the start, because people in chat have brought up a good point too. He's responsible for Operation Warp Speed. He's responsible for putting in Amy Comey Barrett. He's responsible for so many.
Fauci.
Exact. Well, yeah, we could have gotten Barbara Lagoa, like I said on Timcast. Hardliner came from has a
He's
Cuban.
responsible for Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, Anthony Fauci. Obviously,
he's owning
Anthony
this cover-up at this point.
Yep, he did Warp Speed vaccine and never apologized for the outcome of the vaccines.
Heavily involved in Operation Q.
Obviously responsible for the war in Iran that's escalated. Failed to stop the war between Russia and Ukraine. Said he was going to solve it on day one.
He didn't just fail, he's expanded it.
Yep.
Something Biden didn't even do.
Yep.
Interior strikes into Russia's
Failed to tackle
infrastructure.
inflation, and this is kind of a taboo to say. It's certainly something people avoided saying during the campaign. But most of the inflation that we experienced under the Biden administration was actually a latent response to the 40% of all U.S. dollars that were printed during the
warp
Trump
speed
administration. Correct. So most of that inflation was actually Trump's fault. I didn't want to blame Trump at the time, though I was aware of this fact because, that printing and some of those monetary policies were in response to a massive pandemic. But the pandemic wasn't actually massive. The harm of the pandemic was the response to it.
And another thing no one points out is Trump 1, Trump 2 is when all these weird-ass diseases started popping up. We had COVID-19, obviously, under Trump, and then now we're getting the alpha-gal ticks. Now we're getting the hookworm, screwworms. Now we're getting all the weird
Taco Bell diarrhea that everybody's getting.
I have that. We'll be covering that shortly too. The explosive diarrhea. Bring your wet wipes to work, folks, because if you get a bad Chipotle, ooh, you're gonna be in fucking trouble. Bring the wet wipes. You'll thank me later.
I'm pissed off about the fact that China intentionally allowed COVID-19 to spread internationally after they discovered that it was spreading domestically, and they were never held accountable in any way, shape, or form for that. We just let countries like China get away with murdering millions upon millions of people and causing almost the entire collapse of the global economy. Makes me think that maybe we allowed Russia to get away with, murdering Lindsey Graham.
I mean, if that's true.
I don't know. But
I hate to say it, but you might be onto something here. The backing of the intelligence, and as much as we keep finding out day by day or week by week, it's starting to really lead up to, hey, like, I think you guys are actually really lying to us on a massive scale. And the only reason why you're actually not telling us the truth is because it would actually cause absolute panic in the craziest way.
I mean, Butler's being covered up. Charlie Kirk's being covered
who
up.
stops the investigation to their own assassination attempt?